120 seconds. 110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning, talk champion, Jonathan Small, in the house. Good morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
Doing fine, and you, Stan? It's a pleasure to be back here again. Look forward to it every week.
It's good to see you again.
Right.
Your weekend was good, huh?
Weekend was very good. Strange weekend, you know. The weather pattern yesterday felt like it was more, I don't know, man, late autumn, early spring, wearing coats, rain.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you take the good with the bad. The sun is coming out now. So the weekend, I didn't get a chance to watch too much sports. I listened to the Red Sox game over the weekend, but I kind of missed the NBA playoffs. And
no basketball?
No, I was catching a little bit at the airport, but not glued in for the entire game. You know, really couldn't watch the entire Lakers game. I don't even know if the Lakers even won or not. I know the 76ers, Philadelphia, they swept the Nets. So they're going to the next round.
Oh.
And I think the winner of Boston and the Atlanta Hawks will be facing the Philadelphia 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know. It might be Philly's year this year.
It wasn't their year with the Super Bowl.
No, they lost.
No, they lost.
And but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's gonna be tough to get through the Boston Celtics and then get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But anything is up for grabs. You know, I don't know if your father likes the 76ers or not.
I don't know. He's not much of a basketball guy. He likes football.
Football, okay.
Yeah.
And yourself, you kind of can take it or leave it?
I try to stay away from sports except for the finals. I've grown to like football, of course, because my wife likes football. Right. But I'm an all-in kind of guy, so I had to stay away from sports.
Right.
Because it will consume you.
Yeah.
Consume you. That's why I don't do golf. Because if I did golf, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be out on the golf course.
Yeah,
that would become my obsession.
Yeah, it's a nice sport hobby to have, golf. A lot of things you can network through golf.
Golf's not a hobby; it's an obsession.
It's obsession. Obsession.
Obsession.
Okay.
It's not a sport; it's an obsession.
You got to be good though, real skill to hit that little ball in that
right.
hole.
And then your opponent is yourself, and you got to get better than you were the day before. And the only way you do that is be out there hitting, swinging. And so that's just me. That's not for I can't say that about everybody, but for me. And so I have to stay away from these kinds of things because I'm an all-in kind of guy.
And that's a good way to really think about life. You be all in. And you told me that one time before. If you're gonna make a major deal or a major move, you got to be all in. You can't be half. Have your leg in the water and have one leg out of the water. You got to get in the pool or stay out of the pool.
Get in or out.
In or out. So I like that concept that you have. Yeah. And everything. And I'm the kind of person that I don't like to get involved with something if I'm not serious or I'm committed about it. I know that may not be the best way sometimes to do things. You're not going to become a serious activist because you're just not committed towards it. It's just I can't fake things like that.
Well, that's why now my wife and I are the same. So our approach is burn the boat.
Okay.
When you land on shore, burn the boat so that the people like you can't go home.
Can't go.
Right. You are gonna be either you're gonna die here or we're gonna win.
Right.
We're all in, and for those of you that weren't, there is no escape. Just forward march to victory.
But you're saying that like in general life?
Well, we tend to be like that with everything we undertake. If you're gonna do it all the way, and go for it. No prisoners, no hostages, just victory.
Well, that might be a good introduction towards our topic this morning because I don't think I think you got some type of beliefs towards our topic that we're going to be talking about today, but you're not 100% sold on it. So.
Oh, no. It's not that I'm not 100% sold. No. I don't know in what context you mean when you say 100% sold.
Committed towards making a change. If we're going to make a structural change in the state of Connecticut.
I'm absolutely committed to structural change.
So this topic that we're going to be talking about, you would be actually...
We'll find out when we talk about it.
That's the best way. Bring someone of an expert on.
We bring an expert on. We're going to have a great conversation of that. I'm assured. It is Monday. We always have special guests on Monday because it's Special Guest Monday, and so we always let Jonathan do the high honors of introducing our special guests. So.
Well, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. This morning we have a returning guest, actually, to Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. We've had the pleasure of having him on two separate occasions, and the third time definitely should be the charm. The guest is a very insightful, thought-provoking individual that brings a lot of experience and character towards many different aspects of life. The guest this morning is no other than a retired attorney of Wethersfield, Connecticut, I believe, originally from the Buffalo, New York area. No other than retired attorney Mark Korber. Good morning, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm great, Jonathan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you back here again.
I gotta say, I was sitting here listening. It's like I didn't want to come on. I just wanted to listen to you two guys talk about it. I love this, the burn the boat analogy. That's really quite clever. And it's, I don't know, if I led my whole life, I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big football fan and Buffalo Bills fan. And those guys are all in exactly the way that Stan was talking. Their whole lives are built on, I got to be the best I can possibly be at this, and I'm taking everything out. I can't do that. Man, at some point I've just got to go back and relax and say, wait a minute, I'm not all in. I'm just watching. So I was enjoying watching and listening to the two of you. It was great.
Okay. All right. That's good
I like
to know.
that. I like that. That's funny. I'm not all in. I'm watching.
Watching, right. Well, Mark, again, briefly, could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background before we get into our main topics of discussion?
Sure. I was, as you said, I was born and raised in the Buffalo, New York area. Lived there my whole childhood. Moved to Connecticut to go to law school. Came here in 1975, and my wife and I never left because it's a great place to live, and we like being here. And I practiced law at Merthyr Carolina through 2010, and then I was practicing on my own for a few years. Now I'm pretty much fully retired. Was involved in a whole variety of community activities over the course of my career here. And for a long time, you guys found me because for a long time I've been interested in getting Greater Hartford to change how it governs itself, and to instead of having Hartford govern itself, having a larger geographic area, have one government. And so I began working on that. I've got 3 kids. They're all adults. One's in Boston, one's in Glastonbury, one's in Wethersfield. And they're all doing great, and life's good.
Well, that's good to know, Mark. Mark, again, you feel the greater Hartford area in particular needs to have, I guess, a change towards the county form of government that currently exists. And you think, from what I understand, that Hartford should kind of become, let's say, a combined city with the surrounding towns of, I don't know, was it 8 or 10 that you mentioned, combining to be one? Is that kind of how you still feel about the whole structural change?
Right. I think if you look at cities around the country, Hartford is unusual, to say the least. Hartford is tiny compared to, if you look at metropolitan areas that have 750,000 to 1 million people, and that's about what the greater Hartford metropolitan area looks like. When you look at metropolitan areas of that size, the core city is typically 200, 300,000, as much as 500,000 people in the core city, and then some suburbs beyond that. And instead, in Hartford, we have a tiny core city, and most of the people live in the suburbs. And it turns out to be a terribly inefficient and kind of an anti-community way to organize the governance of your community. And in fact, I think that Hartford's never going to go anywhere until we change how we govern the community and how people think of their community. I think I live in Wethersfield. The people in Wethersfield do not think that Hartford is part of their community. And it's silly because you're driving on a street and it looks identical. If you drive north out of Wethersfield into Hartford, you can't even tell you crossed the city line because it all looks like one city, and it should be governed as one city.
Well, let's go a little backwards with that approach, because you're right on one level, but you could be wrong on another level. Yes, when you do cross the border from the surrounding towns, whether it's West Hartford, Wethersfield, Bloomfield, and you cross into Hartford, it doesn't look much different. That part is correct. But as you get deeper into the inner core of the city, you can see a difference now between how West Hartford, Windsor, Bloomfield looks comparable to the inner city of the city looks. So if you regionalize the whole area with the 8 and 10 different surrounding towns, how would that still change the whole inner city core of the city, just beyond just the fact that you changed the whole name of the place?
Well, you're never going to make the inner city of Hartford look like West Hartford Center, and no cities around the country do that. Every city has poorer neighborhoods and wealthier neighborhoods. Every city has better developed and more poorly developed areas of their city, and that won't necessarily change. I'm not naive enough to think that that we're going to create some kind of utopia here. But what is different is that in all the other cities around the country, the people who live in those poor neighborhoods are governed by the same city and the same government as the people who live in the wealthier neighborhoods. And the result of that is that all of those communities are sharing their collective wealth, they're sharing their collective talents. There is a natural cultural mix in the cities that doesn't exist so much in Hartford. In Hartford, what's particularly bad, I think, about the way Hartford is governed is that the people in Wethersfield, for example, don't think that the people in Hartford are their neighbors. They don't think they're part of the community they live in. People in Wethersfield think my community is Wethersfield. People in Windsor think my community is Windsor. In similarly sized metropolitan areas, the people who live in what we call West Hartford are voting side by side with the people we call Hartford.
Right.
And the result is that those people think of each other as, to use Stan's metaphor, they're all on the same boat. And so they're collectively and together looking to solve problems. People in Wethersfield or Newington simply do not care about what Hartford's problems are because it's not their problem. And so I think the change isn't so much that isn't going to make Hartford look like Bloomfield or look like West Hartford. The change is going to make all of the people recognize that they're working together to make this community better, instead of having all of those people thinking they belong to separate communities and don't need to care about the other one.
Well, Mark, I usually debate Stan about this over the past couple of weeks, and now it seems like I might be debating you about this issue. I think what you're saying is true. The people in the surrounding towns don't care about Hartford because there's no benefit for them to really get involved or do anything about the city of Hartford. Mm-hmm. But just because somebody would care, I don't know, again, if you made it one whole city, that when you say they would care about the city, okay, a 12-year-old girl gets killed in the inner city of Hartford. Yes, they don't like the fact that has happened, but are they going to be so committed or concerned to say that we need to do something towards gun violence, we need to do something towards the open-air drug market? Caring about a situation as a whole city, you may care that you're paying your taxes now into the city of Hartford, so you want to be aware where your money is going to. You want to be aware of how the school system is being operated. So I do see some good benefits about, regionalize it towards one city. You don't believe in a utopia world that, we could kind of eradicate poverty or eradicate the drug problems that exist. And it's beyond just the core inner cities. So caring about a place because you're a part of the city is one thing. Having some real changes that needs to be corrected, I think, is a little bit different. Kind of bring you into this a little bit early, Stan. Do you think it would make some dramatic changes if we just regionalize Hartford as one whole city? What Mark is
I think the change you're thinking about is different than the change that Mark's talking about or the change that I'm talking about.
Okay.
I think you're thinking that regionalization is going to bring about some like almost a magical change. But it isn't. It won't. What it does is it creates a region. Mm-hmm. To Mark's point, I had the pleasure of recording I don't normally name clients, but I had the pleasure of recording for Hartford Next, which was formerly Hartford 2000.
Right.
And this weekend they had a whole community engagement, and one of the conversations that happened as a result of what the facilitator was doing was the sense of the neighborhood revitalization zones or the communities.
Mm-hmm.
And in Hartford, the communities don't think of themselves as Hartford.
Right.
I mean, the localization of everything, the little fiefdoms, is so bad in Connecticut that it's seen everywhere. And in Hartford, the 17, 18 communities, depending upon what you consider downtown or Bushnell Park part of the community, they all think of themselves as separate.
Right.
Oh, we're behind the rocks. You're in Hartford. No. We're behind the rocks. We're Blue Hills. Oh, we're Asylum Hill. We're downtown. Downtown's different. I think if they could all have their own school system, police force, and mayor, they would. And that is counterproductive. In Hartford, it's so bad that one side of the block is a different neighborhood than the other side of the block.
Yeah.
It's absurd. Hartford is a city. It's a whole city. And the people have to start to think of themselves as a whole city. And to Mark's point, the region has to think of itself as a whole region or as a whole city. So Hartford would be the region. Connecticut is so small.
Stan, can I add something there?
Absolutely.
I think what you said is exactly right. And I've read some things that say that Hartford's kind of unique in the notion that we have these 18 neighborhoods or however many there are in Hartford. I can't identify them. I don't know what they all are, but most cities around the country don't talk about themselves about these micro neighborhoods that we seem to be focused on. But more to the point, and Jonathan's question highlights exactly what the difference would be like. It wouldn't be an overnight difference. It would be a long-term difference. But right now, when a 12-year-old girl tragically dies on the streets of Hartford because of what is continuing gun violence, and the city council meets to talk about it and do whatever it is they think they might do about it, nobody in West Hartford cares because, which is not fair to the residents of West Hartford. There are plenty of people in West Hartford who care. But collectively, West Hartford doesn't care because it doesn't have anything to do with their town. But if you merged Hartford and 6 or 8 other towns into one normal-sized city, you would have a city council where 2 or 3 of the council members were representatives of West Hartford. And representatives of what is now Hartford would be raising the issue of gun violence in their city at the city council. And West Hartford would be very involved because their council people would be sitting at the table and they would be part of the discussion. They can't sit there and say, sorry, it's not my problem anymore. Right now, Wethersfield says to Hartford, sorry, not my problem. And it's wrong. Well, one, it's wrong just because we can solve everybody's problems better if we work collectively. But 2, it's wrong because the community we all live in is Greater Hartford. We all live in the same place. And for some people in some parts of the community to say what's going on in another part of the same community is not our problem is a horrible way to run a community. We're all in this together. We ought to be all cooperating to run it as well as we can together. And the town boundaries create an artificial separation of the community that makes the place worse. It doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
Right.
And as I said, it's not an overnight cure. It's not a total cure. I'm not sitting here saying we're going to eliminate racism 6 months after we have merge the towns and the city, we're not going to eliminate the racism 6 years or 6 decades after we merge the towns and the city. It's not a solution to every problem, but I think we don't move forward until we get together and recognize we're all one community. Oh, and by the way, we can lower. Part of the problem in Hartford is a tax problem. And if we put everybody together, we're sharing resources, we can lower everybody's taxes and serve ourselves better. Does that solve all the problems? No, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it is. I think until we do that, we are not going to solve our problem.
Well, you mentioned something about if you form one city, then the city council in West Hartford would be committed because they would be part of the city. But
no,
he didn't say that.
That's not what he said.
I said you would have a Jonathan. You would have a city council. I wrote an essay once about it and said, well, suppose you'd have a city council of 15 council members. Based on population, that would mean, because if you merged 7 or 8 towns into Hartford, you'd have a city of about 300,000 people. What was formerly called Hartford would have 125,000 or whatever the number is these days. And so that would mean that 6 out of the 15 council members would be elected from Hartford, what was formerly Hartford. And I think my numbers suggested to me that Newington and West Hartford together would elect 3.
Right.
And most of the other towns would elect 1. So you'd have 3 council members who were representing West Hartford, what was formerly called West Hartford, on the town council. And when the 5 or 6 council members from Hartford showed up and said, we have to do something about these shootings, or we have to do something about the sewage problem, or we have to do something about whatever it is that those 5 or 6 councilmen were talking about, the 3 councilmen who represent West Hartford can't sit there and say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. The elected representatives of the people of West Hartford would be forced to be not by at gunpoint, but they're sitting on the council. Their job is to participate in the governance of the city. They would be forced to participate in the discussion about what are we going to do about people being shot on the streets of our city. Right now, the West Hartford Town Council, if you raise that at the West Hartford Town Council, they would say, I'm sorry, that question is out of order. It's outside our jurisdiction.
Right. You're right. Well, that's
right.
Well, excuse me, Mark. That's kind of what I meant. Like the 2 people that represented West Hartford now would be part of the whole region. So I did, stated it wrong when I mentioned about the whole West Hartford Council. No, what you just stated is correct. But you could almost say you have council people in Hartford now, so they can't sound the alarm. The city council that you have now in the city of Hartford, they can't stand up and make a difference. We have to hope that we form a region. I know that's not what you're saying, Mark and Stan, but it almost sounds like that's what you are saying, though, that to get some real changes, you got to form the whole region. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but the current city council is not strong enough that exists in the capital city now, Hartford, to make a difference.
Right. I agree. I think that's true. I think that is absolutely true. And it's true because the community is a group of 300 to 500,000 people. I am a member of the Greater Hartford. There's a difference between what is the community and what is the political subdivision. And the problem that we have, the only way you can govern a community properly is if the size of the political subdivision, the town, is the same more or less as the size of the community. And asking, take my body as an example. I've got 2 arms and 2 legs, and I'm one being. I'm like Greater Hartford. And I am one community. Asking the city council of the city of Hartford to solve that problem is like asking my right hand to solve the problem and saying to my legs and to my left hand, don't bother, it's not your problem. We'll solve this problem with our right hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We should all be put together so we can use all of our hands to solve the problems in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's why I'm not saying that Hartford's incapable. It is incapable in some ways. It doesn't have enough resources. One reason it doesn't have enough resources is all the other people, the left hands and the right and left legs, aren't using their resources to help solve the problem because we let them keep all of their tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to do it all together. We are one community. You can't, there isn't anything you can do about that. We all live together in the same space. We drive on the same roads. We go to the same malls. We go to the same movie theaters. The people in the suburbs come downtown to go to Duncan Park. We're all living in the same place. We're one community. We have to govern ourselves as one community, and we all have to work on it together.
Yes, Mark.
That's my point.
Right, Mark. That's true. But also the people in West Hartford and the surrounding towns, they don't send their children to one school system. They do send their children to their own school systems in West Hartford, Simsbury. So that is a big difference, though. Just that alone, where you send your children to school, I think it makes a big difference. So if you change the whole region as one, would that go towards improving the current Hartford public school system as well?
Over the long term, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You'd have one school system with one superintendent of schools and 10 high schools. And over time, this is another thing that it was not going to happen immediately. If I could merge the towns and the cities, 2 years later, all the same kids would be going to Hall High School, all the same kids would be going to Buckley, all the same kids would be going to East Hartford High. It's not, you're not going to merge and create some kind of master busing system that is taking kids all over. Everything's going to be the same after you merge. But we're going to have one government. You're going to have one board of education. And over time, it's that one board of education will do a better job doing curriculum development, having kids. Some kids would start attending classes at some other schools, depending on where Chinese is being taught, or depending on, wherever a special program exists. Over time, there would be serious improvement. Not to mention, there would be more resources available to help all of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you just look at the simple numbers, right now we have, with Hartford and 7 towns, we have 8 superintendents of school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you merged them all into one, you'd have one superintendent and a couple of assistants.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there's 4 superintendents of school that you don't have, and instead of those people being superintendents, you can pay them half as much, and you've added 4 teachers to the faculties. If nothing else, you've added 4 teachers. There are nobody around the country. Well, let me give you this example. You'll like this one, Jeff. There is no city that I'm aware of around the country where anybody in this, with one exception, there is no city around the country where people in the city are saying, why don't we divide up our school system and have 8 separate school systems instead of 1. Nobody's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
The only place that I know of where it's happened in the last 3 years is in Buckhead, which is a suburb or a neighborhood in Atlanta.
Right.
It's occupied by rich white people who want to separate from the city so they don't have anything to do with the rest of the people living in the city. Mm-hmm. That's the only place that I know of that wants to divide and run a system that looks like Hartford's.
Mm-hmm.
And the only people there who want to do it are the rich white people who want to separate themselves. It's just, what we do is just demonstrably the worst way to manage a school system. Will it make our school system better? Yes. Will it solve every problem? No. But until, when West Hartford has its own school system and Hartford has a separate school system, how can you possibly address the inequities, the educational inequities between the two? The West Hartford system says, I don't care. I don't have anything to do with your system. That's like asking West Hartford to help solve Hartford's educational problems is no different from asking the Board of Education in Des Moines, Iowa, from helping Hartford solve its school system, school issues. Why should West Hartford have anything to do with fixing the streets, violence, anything in Hartford? They don't have any more interest in it legally than Des Moines, Iowa.
Well, you said the key word, though. Legally, they don't have no authority to do anything directly. Yeah. I mean, you can always do certain things underneath, underlining issues, but legally, they can't do. The West Hartford can't authorize the West Hartford Police Department to come into Hartford.
That's right.
You can't make those changes. But Stan, let me kind of bring you back into this question. Into this conversation. You're running for mayor this year in Hartford. I think I asked you this in the past. Would you prefer to become a mayor of the current city the way it exists now, or would you like to become the mayor of the region city if it was, changed structurally to the greater region that Mark is talking about? Or doesn't make a difference? I mean,
the question's an interesting question, but it's built on a couple of I guess theoretical concepts as you're placing. I'm running for mayor here because I don't like the way things are being managed. If it was a regional system, it would be probably managed differently, and there would be no reason for me to run for mayor. Maybe I might be running for city council so that I could have better input on how Hartford as a neighborhood is represented. But the conditions in Hartford are what creating in my mind, the need to run for mayor.
Right.
That's not a regional one. So I'm not running for mayor for the sake of power or control. Well, I'd rather be mayor of a bigger city. There's a lot more headache there. There's a lot more to manage. And so I'm not doing this because I just, I want power and control. I think I have a solution for what is going on in the city with those dynamics.
Jonathan, Mayor Bronin answered that question a few months ago at a press conference where somebody suggested that Hartford and East Hartford should merge into one city. And Mayor Bronin said simply, "Where do I sign?"
Right.
He understands completely that Hartford would be better able to deal with its problems and its issues if Hartford were part of a larger governmental organization that covered the whole community.
Well, Mark, let me just kind of speak for the surrounding towns, and I may not be the best person because I don't live in these surrounding towns, but let me just say hypothetically, I'm in West Hartford, I'm in Bloomfield, I'm in Windsor. I like the way things currently exist. I sympathize with the issues that people are dealing with in Hartford, but I don't want to change the current structure that exists in West Hartford. I like the way that we run our own government here in West Hartford. I don't want to give up any legal authority or any power. Am I wrong to feel that way as a resident of West Hartford, Windsor, Bloomfield? Is there anything wrong with that way of thinking, Mark?
That's great. I love it. That is that is the core of the problem.
What's the problem?
That is the core. I've had people say to me, "I like my town the way it is."
Mm-hmm.
That's the I say that phrase to myself and to my friends all the time. I like my town. Of course, we all like our towns the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And to which I have a couple of different responses. One is the practical response is if you merge Hartford into Wethersfield into Hartford, your town is not going to change. My house is going to be on the same street, and I'm going to have the same neighbors. The people in my neighborhood are going to send their kids to the same schools. It is not going to change. The government is going to change, but my life is not the government. My life is my life, and I choose what my life is.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is, you like the town the way it is. If you change your government, the town is going to be pretty much the same anyway. 50 years from now, it may have changed some, but in the short term, what's changing? Nothing's going to change. So as a practical matter, my answer to people who say that is, it's not going to make any difference. But on the other hand, it's really what you say is the core of the problem. What is wrong in our community is that many of us have the wrong walk around every day with the wrong notion of what our community is.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have these political jurisdictions, they're called political subdivisions, the legal term, because we have the towns, people here tend to think of themselves as think of their community as their town. And that's wrong. That's not what their community is. And I often say to people, when you're traveling and you meet somebody in Colorado and they say, where are you from? What do I say? I say, well, I'm from Wethersfield, Connecticut. It's a suburb of Hartford. Because nobody knows where Wethersfield, Connecticut is, or Bloomfield is. Nobody knows where those towns are, and it's only meaningful to people who live in Connecticut. The rest of the country thinks we're crazy.
Right.
And so my community is Greater Hartford. That's the community I live in. And the problem with the people who say, I like my town the way it is that they have been misguided into believing that their town is their community. And it's not true. West Hartford is my town if I live there, but my community is still Greater Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem when people say, I like my town the way it is, what they're really saying is, I like my neighborhood the way it is.
Right.
And fine, I'll leave your neighborhood the way it is. Will you please just change the way you're governed so we can all take care of our community, which happens to be bigger.
Right. But
so you're absolutely right. And the problem, my wife always tells me, says, look, you have to recognize that no change in terms of a group of people who are suffering, they can talk and work all they want to fix things, but the reality is that the people with the power are the ones who have to fix it.
Right.
And she always says it in terms of women's suffrage and women's rights. It's like women didn't give themselves the vote in 1920.
Mm.
Men did, because men were the only people who could vote.
Yes.
The problem for the city of Hartford is not the city of Hartford. The problem is getting the people in the suburbs to understand that they're the problem. They're the ones with the power. They need to understand. So my view is that you've got to get the people you're talking about, the people who say, I like my town the way it is, you've got to get those people to understand, the community I live in is Greater Hartford, and I need to get to work on my community.
Mm.
That's the change that has to happen. And it's not, I don't even know if the people in Hartford would want to merge with the suburbs. That's a different question.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to get the people in the suburbs to recognize that they are part of a greater community, and once they've recognized that, people are good people and they care about their community.
Yeah.
You just got to get them to redefine and understand what their community really is.
Well, Mark, keep in mind most states in the United States have a county form of government. I think Connecticut is only one or two states. I think was it Rhode Island is the other state that has cities and towns. It's like running the
Rhode Island is quite similar.
Right. So we're very rare. Number one, that we only the second state, one or two states that have this current form of government. The bigger issue, though, and the bigger problem is, again, getting the other side that you just mentioned to see that they need to form one whole region or one whole city. That's like the surrounding towns look at Hartford as one whole and not be separated by boundaries, geographical boundaries. I had mentioned this to you one time, Mark, off the air, and I'll even say it on the air. I really personally believe if you sold Fairfield County as one whole and made Stamford one whole city, that would be a much easier sell than trying to sell the regions here in Hartford. I don't know what it is. Maybe Stamford is in the Gold Coast. It's a wealthy city overall, and it seems to be a city moving. You don't hear year after year Stamford having the highest homicide rates. It doesn't have the kind of hard poverty. It has poverty, but not like Hartford has. So I think people in Fairfield County would be much more in favor. I'm willing to bet all of the money that I had if I was rich. If you had a survey and you asked the people in Fairfield County, would they be more likely to in favor of forming one city as Stamford and made that Fairfield County than what you have here now with the surrounding towns? But that being said, what you are advocating or promoting, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen, though, anytime soon, making Hartford one region.
Well, if you ask me to tell you the likelihood of it happening, I'd tell you it's pretty small.
Right.
My view is it is the only problem that's worth working on in Hartford. Until we rationalize how we govern ourselves, we are not going to have economic development. We are not going to have jobs. Have you been to Worcester lately? Worcester is booming.
Mm-hmm.
Hartford has stagnated and has been Greater Hartford and has been stagnant for 30 years. There's no population growth. There's no economic growth. The problems persist because we don't solve our problems collectively. We've got towns fighting with each other for every economic development activity. We waste tens of millions of dollars a year governing ourselves the way we govern ourselves. Nobody else is doing that. It's not an accident that this community is not growing, that it's not growing economically, and that we govern ourselves the way we govern ourselves. It's not an accident that those things are happening together. And if we look at it and say, well, this problem is too difficult to tackle, then we're just being stupid. Then we may as well just turn off the lights and go someplace else.
But Mark,
but it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
Why are parents here tell their children, move away from Hartford and make your life someplace else?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they tell them that? They tell them that because they look at the community and say, this community's going nowhere.
Well, Mark, truthfully, you do have to look at the history. At the turn of the 1900s, Hartford was the richest city per capita. And West Hartford used to be part of Hartford. Now, there were some changes that has happened along the way over that period of time. And you can't, to me, leave out the deindustrialization of the cities throughout the country, Hartford included. You can't leave out white flight, what that did. You can't leave out the riots of the late 60s, what that did. So there's some things that historically has led up to the capital city being in the predicament that it currently exists. And yet, and yes, you can say regionalism is a problem, and that would be a big move in the right direction. But there's a reason why West Hartford wanted to separate from Hartford. There's a reason why white flight took place. People wanted to get out of the cities. You can't offset these reasons and say that they didn't make a difference towards the way this current city exists today.
Well, but you're
right about the history.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, you tell me that merging Hartford and 6 or 7 towns is not going to happen, I'd say to you, it'll happen sooner than you are going to convince 100 million white people in this country to stop being racist. Racism is a problem that that makes merging the towns look like a simple problem.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, you can go talk to the people of West Hartford all you want and say you got to stop being racist, and they're going to say, "What are you talking about? I'm not a racist." That's the conversation that always happens.
Right.
That conversation is going nowhere faster than my conversation when I go to West Hartford and say, you ought to merge with Hartford. Because I can say to those people, you know what, if you merge with Hartford, your taxes will go down.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but if it's true, that's something they'll listen to. And what I'm telling you is that the people in West Hartford I live in Wethersfield. I won't pick on the people in West Hartford. I live in Wethersfield. The people in Wethersfield say, well, what's going on in Hartford is not my problem.
Right.
Okay? And I'm telling you that if I can make the people in Wethersfield recognize that Hartford is part of their community, once I recognize that community, then I recognize those people who live there as my neighbors. And when I recognize the people living in Hartford as my neighbors, that's the day I begin to stop being a racist white person. Because now I view those people as my neighbors and my friends. And that's the way I can attack racism. I can't go to the people in Wethersfield and say, you ought to stop being racist and help the people in Hartford. That does not sell, in part because they don't even understand their racism. But they understand community and they understand neighbors. And that's the start, I think.
But Mark, what you just said, is that really racism, or what you're talking about would be almost like socialism? You want a certain class of people to give up a certain level of power and control that they currently have or think they have, but let's just say they have, and redistribute it to the people that don't have it. And also,
that's not what I said.
That's not, but it sounds like that's what you said.
I'm talking about democracy, Jonathan. I'm talking about democracy. Okay. I am talking about the people in a community governing themselves in what they view as the best interest for their community. That's democracy.
Okay.
And that's what, and we don't have that. We have divided our community into separate sections, so that we are not democratically governing our community. It's not socialism at all.
Not social.
And I don't talk about transferring wealth because I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's taking care of your community. And it's what people normally do. It's people started living in tribes and the communities grew and got bigger. But the whole point of government is to take care of your community.
But, well, let me bring you into this, Stan, and I'll ask you this question. Mark mentioned about white people that live in West Hartford and Wethersfield should want to form as one region and be concerned and committed towards what goes on in Hartford. Do you see black people that live in Bloomfield, Windsor, and also West Hartford? They're the majority blacks in Bloomfield and Windsor, so you have to. Well, they're not the majority in Windsor.
No, they're not.
But they are the majority in Bloomfield. So, do the black people in Bloomfield, you think they care enough to be concerned with what goes on in Hartford?
I think everyone is generally concerned about what's going on in Hartford. It's just that it's not their problem.
It's not their problem.
More than what goes on in Blue Hills is the problem of the people that are in over in Maple Avenue area.
Right.
In their mind, they have a concern over there.
Right.
So that's your area. You take care of your problem. until people start to think in terms of this is my city,
Right.
or the region is my city, they don't really have buy-in because they're concerned about the things that affect them. That touch their lives. That's the broader concern. And so if you have a conversation with folks, with black people in Windsor and Bloomfield, and I have them every Saturday,
Right, you do,
with the African American Alliance, and there are people in the alliance that are absolutely against Hartford getting, the $50 million that the state gave them. You all can't manage your money. You always got to reach out to the suburbs and other communities because you all run. You're reckless in how you spend your money and the decisions that you make and the corruption and the incompetence. These are conversations I have every Saturday with certain individuals. And so, as far as they're concerned, they left Hartford.
Right.
They're not looking to bring the problem that they think they're leaving with them.
Right.
All right. But I think what Mark is talking about is the way we think of the region.
Right.
Just as a practical matter, Connecticut cannot continue to have 169 towns. It just can't. At some point, it's going to break. Right. I would say that the thing that gave new life to 169 towns was the pandemic. If it wasn't for the pandemic, there would be no economic bailout. All this money that they created and started handing money out to everybody, that wouldn't be there. So they would have to make some really hard, difficult economic decisions. It's a luxury that really is not sustainable. And eventually it's going to collapse. It's just a matter of when it collapses or who has the courage to make the necessary changes to create a more regionalized government. This has to be done at the state level.
State level, that's what I'm saying.
And so the powers that be, at some point, will do that. Now you see them doing it little by little, incrementally. You've got the Capital Region, Conference of CROG governments and things like that. But the MDC is a regional municipality that has commissioners from all of the member towns.
Right.
And the chair of the board kind of serves as the quasi-mayor. All right. But the commissioners are all concerned about the MDC. Right. And so what goes on in one area affects them all. It may not be there may not be flooding and sewage backing up in Weathersfield like it is in the north end of Hartford or some parts of West Hartford. But the money necessary to fix it, they're concerned about. Right. So how do we mitigate that problem over there so it doesn't cost us? And of course, the people over on the north end of Hartford, when they hear Weathersfield say, "Well, our cove is flooding out with sewage and we're downwind of the plant," they say, "Well, we don't care about that. That's in your town." Well, no. If money's gonna go to fix that, now you can't get your storm system fixed. So everyone has to come together. They have to work creatively together. More ideas at the table means more solutions. All right. So in that sense, as a practical matter, I think if you look at it as a practical matter, it's an easier sell than an emotional matter. Right. Because people are in their emotions. The romance they had for when their town was a certain way. And you talk to some Hartfordites and you talk about regionalism, then they get all emotional and they get reminiscent. Well, I remember when we used to go to G Fox. G Fox isn't even there anymore. Right. There's a conversation about something that doesn't. It's not. I can remember Corvettes and the Isle of Safety. None of that is here. Right. So the things they're trying to hold on to are these ideas and notions. If the legislature forced this to happen, like they did in Enfield, folk will wrap their head around it real quick and they move on. But
I think the Metropolitan District Commission is a good example. That is a regional water and sewage authority, And I know the mayor of West Hartford, Sherry Cantor, has some issues with the chairman. And like you say, the flooding and the sewage issues isn't like what's taking place in West Hartford is not like what's taking place in the north end of Hartford in certain areas. So in some areas, they will be concerned where their money is going towards, how much, what rate, how much taxes or how much they have to pay every month to go into the metropolitan, how much you're being charged, for your water and sewage bill. You feel like you got some common similarities with the other surrounding towns. Hartford might be paying more, Hartford might be paying less. I don't think it's an equal pay scale that all the cities and towns pay the same amount to NBC. So that might be a little bit different. But again, Mark, I don't want to leave you out of this conversation. You have anything else you would like to address, Mark?
Well, I can talk forever, Jonathan.
Okay.
First, I got to congratulate Stan because he said it better than I say it. And the thing that he said that people really ought to focus on, I think, is forget about what your heart is telling you. What I'm saying and what Stan just said is anybody who understands how this community operates and looks at it from a strictly practical point of view can tell that the way we are organized doesn't make any sense, and that there is a much better way for us to be organized. And we need to stop letting our hearts govern that decision making and have this community begin to do the things that people understand are the practically correct things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not to create MDCs. The MDC is a good example of the problem. Mm-hmm. If you turn the clock back and instead of having all of our separate towns, Hartford was a city of 300,000 people. When the MDC was formed, it wouldn't have had the governance structure it has. It would have been a department of the city of Hartford. Mm-hmm. And the department of the city of Hartford would have addressed sewage problems a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But an organization like the MDC, which is not directly responsible to the people in any way, develops over time exactly the way the MDC did, and that is it becomes an independent entity that runs itself. Mm-hmm. And Sherry Cantor can sit down, you can see the problem because all Sherry Cantor can do is write op-ed pieces and complain because she only has one vote at the table.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if West Hartford were part of Hartford, and if the MDC were part of the Department of Public Works of Greater Hartford, that sewage problem would have been solved 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, there are practical solutions, and frankly, we ought to be ashamed of ourselves for not having long ago said, let's address our problem.
Right. Well, you're one person, Mark Korber, that is currently committed towards addressing this problem with regionalism. We have to definitely applaud you for what you believe in and what you're willing to stand for, because you are the minority in how you feel about this particular issue. You're not the majority. And even though I don't live in Wethersfield, and I can willing to bet you're not the majority how people in Wethersfield feel that we should change our region. But again, you're great, Mark. I give you definitely A rating for your articulation and your information this morning again, and I definitely appreciate that, Mark.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It's great.
No problem. Yep. Our pleasure.
Well, thanks for taking time out of your schedule once again, Mark. I love the discussion. Eventually, Hartford's thing. Eventually, it's going to be some regionalization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not, but it should.
but then maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll all see, or
Right.
our children will see.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us, and Any
welcome.
any closing words, as Jonathan always likes to say?
No, well, the only closing word is let's get to work. Let's. My own view is to go back to where you started. Is we should all come ashore, get off the boat, and burn the boat and go forward.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Gotta do something different.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, Mark.
All right. Great discussion.
Mark is sharp. He is a very sharp person. And not just with his facts and information. I think he's very sincere and he's very passionate about what he believes in this topic, in the big picture.
And on the Sherry Cantor, no, as quietly as it's kept, she's the vice chair
of what?
The MDC.
The MDC. Okay.
Yeah.
She's the vice chair.
So if the chairman were to be gone,
she would step in.
She becomes just chair.
Okay.
So I think they leave that out of all of the articles.
That part has been left out. I haven't realized.
Right. People. So there's a vested interest in her be ascending upward.
Right.
And that has to be taken into consideration.
It's kind of ironic. I did reach out to Sherry over the weekend, and she's not ready to come on right now. But, who knows in the future? But she's not.
That's
ready.
Interesting. So she don't want to come on.
Right. Well, I mean, her staff did indicate that her schedule wouldn't be available until June. So, I mean, I'll always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So, she didn't say she wouldn't come on. She just said she's not ready to come on.
Do you think she'd stop by here to pick up a check for $1 million?
I think she would be. I think if that check was available, she would.
I got to change my schedule.
Change your schedule. So she could probably make a little adjustments to get on.
People do what they want to do.
They want to do. I agree with that. People do what they want to do, and they do what they have to do.
There you go. All right. Stick and stay. We'll be right back. Take a short break.
Friday, May 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. is the Season 1 finale of Hartford's Got Talent at the famous Bushnell Theater in Hartford, Connecticut. Talent of all ages compete for $15,000 in cash prizes and awards. Don't miss it. Hartford's Got Talent, Friday, May 5th at the Bushnell in Hartford, Connecticut. Hartford's Got Talent, showcasing talent and connecting community. For more information, visit www.hartfordsgottalent.org.
How do you define evil? Is evil the pedophile school administrator or taxation without representation? Is it the gatekeeping community leaders who sell out the very people they were elected to fight for? Or is evil the politician that puts out lies and takes in cash? However you may classify evil, having to choose the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. Nowhere does this rule apply more than during an election for mayor. Choosing a candidate who is the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. No wonder so many people don't vote. It's time for the constituents to flip the script and vote for a mayor you can trust. My name is Jason McCauley. I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor for the city of Hartford. I, like you, am an independent thinker. So let's sit down and talk about my path to victory and why my 5-point plan for Hartford will work. Stop listening to the uninformed evil interests that tell you I can't win. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience. Vote for the name you trust and know. Vote McCauley for mayor.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, welcome back. Love this song. I sit here and listen to that song all night.
Well, it's like an instrumental though. It's no singing. That's an instrumental version.
All right, let me stop. I have to get my head out the music here. All right, welcome back. It's Morning Talk. Jonathan Small, Talk Champion. So, were your questions resolved?
You asking me related towards regionalism? I mean, it was clarified. I think the bigger picture that I was looking at is the community, making some erratic changes beyond just, saving money, as Mark Korber mentioned, people being concerned from the outside as one whole city. I think the questions on that level has been concerned, but he did answer the other questions too. Some of the major problems wouldn't be eradicated just like that. And,
right.
So I guess you can say the questions and clarification was better. I was really concerned with you. I thought you and Mark were I thought you were totally against regionalism.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. I'm not against regionalization. I think regionalization is a necessary eventual outcome for practical purposes.
Right.
I'm a pragmatist. So for practical purposes, regionalization is going to become necessary. I'm not promoting regionalization.
Right.
Like the current mayor was doing, and probably still is. I think Hartford's problems can be addressed if there was an emphasis focused on something different. I've not seen that emphasis happen. So if you're trying to get downtown New Haven on the northbound train, you're never going to get there. And I don't care what you do until you change the direction, you're not going to get to where you're trying to go.
Right.
And so, all things are intentional. Nothing happens by accident. And as our guest did mention, there's a reason why it is the way it is. And so, Hartford could be prosperous, much more so than it is, if people wanted it to be.
Yeah. Well, I think the key want and having the plan, you have the want and the desire, and then you have the commitment to do some things. I mean, there's certainly when you get into crime and your poor educational. You mentioned last week, I don't know how much percentage of people that's illiterate in the city, but it's a high number that you had mentioned last week.
Yeah, 60%. I've heard as high as 61%. I like to say 50 to be on the safe side. But suffice it enough to say that 50% of the adults in Hartford are functionally illiterate. That means they can't read an ATM machine.
Right.
If you can't read an ATM machine, then you're in trouble. That means you also can't read information about politics.
Right.
About your government. About a lot of things. So you're left out of the loop, and you're relegated to the hearsay. So all you know is what someone else tells you. You can't verify, research, or double check anything for yourself. And that puts you at a disadvantage. So you're easily bamboozled because someone could just say something to you.
Well, not only that, but today, knowing how to read or write is far more important than it would have been 100 years ago. I'm pretty sure there was many people that couldn't read or write 100 years
Well, you
ago.
you can get by without reading or writing. I mean, you can have artificial intelligence write something for you. AI can write something for you. You can get other people to write stuff for you. There are ways that people cope, obviously. So there are coping mechanisms and workarounds. But you can't be engaged in your kids' homework.
Yeah. Because you don't know how to read.
Right. And so there's a disadvantage. So, you talk about parental involvement with your kids' school, but you ignore and don't address the fact that some of the kids' parents can't read the homework.
Right.
All right. And then you want to know why when parents come to school, they feel less than. And then the teachers treat them in a less than way, or administration treats them in a less than way. For your child's safety, we're not going to let you in the building. That's not a problem. Tell my kids to come down to the office right now. Why? Because I am withdrawing them from your school. Yeah, tell me my kids can't come in the building. I mean, I can't go in the building where my kids are at. Well, there's other people's kids. I do care about other people's kids. My kids are in here.
Right.
You tell me I can't come into the building where my kids are and come into their class? Then your building ceases to have functional use as far as I'm concerned. I will take them somewhere else up to and including schooling them at home.
Well, that's what will happen when you have choices. And see, everybody is not equipped with that ability to homeschool. You can't
No. Everyone's equipped. Everyone's not willing to make that sacrifice. There's a difference.
Okay.
Everyone is equipped to do what they want because people are equipped to do what they do. People make choices. They make choices, but your choices become limited if you can't read. And so that is a citywide crisis. If we were a nation, it would be a national crisis. It needs to be addressed and it needs to be resolved.
Right. Well, I'll tell you that from what I understand, and I don't know, I mean, might be mixing apples and oranges. What the NAACP is going to have a meeting this week towards gun violence in the city. Man, I got to be careful what I say because it may come across the wrong way. But I got to be honest, man. I had seen this coming, Stan, and I think we talked about this at some point.
We talk about it every year.
Every year, well, yeah.
For the last, 15, 20 years? How long have we been talking about it? We'll talk about it again next year.
Next year, yeah. But you can see it coming, though. And I hate to say it that way, that, somebody gets shot and killed that has nothing to do with it. But, and although up until this point, over the past couple of weeks, crime really was dropping in Hartford, believe it or not. It was
crime hadn't happened in Hartford. Crime didn't go anywhere. It just not happening.
It just not happening, right. That's the reality. It just wasn't happening, but it was still here.
Right. There'll be crime next week.
But break down the people that they were looking to shoot. They were known. They had extensive criminal records, firearm records, and they are part of the neighborhood, as you mentioned, Stan. And I'm not going to say they're criminals, but you got a criminal record. Most likely, you probably hasn't 100% changed your life. Somebody's not going to be looking to kill you just by a simple mistake. Maybe, you looked at them the wrong way. Something you did dramatically made someone feel like they needed to pick up a gun and go shoot and kill you. These are the issues that's going to have to really be addressed. What Mayor Bronin and other state legislators or other legislators talking about, who's being released, should they be released back to the neighborhoods, reentry system programs, should they serve more time? These are serious problems too. You having people being released from prison that may not even be ready to be able to function in society as a law-abiding citizen. It's going to create some havoc at some point. You're going back into something. You're going to run across some enemies. You're going to get confrontational. Things are going to happen, unfortunately. So this not just, and I'm willing to say,
well, these are systemic breakdowns.
And it's a national problem. I know you're concerned always locally, and I can respect that, but it's a national problem, and there's a national common denominator. If you have guns, you have drugs, illegal guns at that, not so much guns, illegal guns.
Guns are easily accessible, so therefore guns become the weapon of choice.
Right.
This is not a gun problem.
Right.
It's a people problem.
Right.
And if guns were outlawed tomorrow, people would still be finding ways to kill one another. And until that is addressed, you will continue to have people resolving their conflicts by taking the life of those with whom they have a conflict with.
Right.
They push people off buildings, down a flight of steps. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why in the high-rise projects they put gates over everything.
Right.
They don't do that in luxury buildings.
Right. There's no need to.
So if you kill somebody, you push them off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Stab them.
Right.
Hit them in the head with a hammer, baseball bat.
Mm-hmm.
Molotov cocktail. There's lots of ways to kill people.
Right.
And there's many, many ways people do die, unfortunately. Hit them with a car. People act like... They act like the problem is the device with which the person chose to neutralize somebody. The problem is the headspace of the people who are engaged in wanting to kill another human being.
Well, that's the bigger problem to correct. Talking about guns might sound like it's a quick solution, a quick
talking
fix.
About guns, to Mark's point earlier, you will have an easier time resolving racism than you will removing guns from Americans' possession. It's not going to happen. So they love to talk about stuff that's never ending.
Yeah.
And not going to change.
Banning all assault weapons and things on that.
Right.
level.
Well, people aren't killing. They didn't kill that. They didn't drive down the street with an assault weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a regular handgun.
Right. Most killings but it's a circular argument that it pulls attention to people. It pulls attention to groups. It pulls attention to politicians. People talk about it like they talk about the weather. Mm-hmm. They have no control over the outcome with the current conversations that they are having.
Yeah.
If they really want to have conversations, and they need to put in place things that mitigate those kinds of activities, which is a return to a moral standard, a return to life-affirming decision-making, where the value of life supersedes death.
Right.
There's protection for the unborn. We don't kill the seniors.
Right.
There are certain things that we do, and then we wonder why the outcome in the society is what it is.
Right.
And people don't want to talk about that.
No.
So they talk about the manifestation of the problem or the symptom, but they're not ever attacking the cause. There is a causality that can be linked to all of the decisions that have been made to where we are now. So if you want to fix this stuff, then you have to go and reestablish.
Right.
If water's leaking out of the dam, then fix the dam. Don't start finding ways to handle the water. Fix where the water's coming from.
So you don't really like to have these type of conversations just to have a conversation, though. I know you stated that in the past. You don't like to just have meetings and just say, and I'm not saying you're against the NAAC upcoming meeting about violence, but that's not your best approach, how you like to operate, Stan. You don't like to just meet just to be meeting and talking and then nothing comes out of it.
Right. What's the solution? If we're meeting to put together I don't mind supporting anybody or any group. I don't mind working on anyone's idea. But if I'm the genesis of the idea, if it's coming from me, then I want to work on something that's going to work.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. It's never a waste of time to help someone else. But if I'm going to engage as an initiator of a thing, it's going to work.
Right. Well, I can look at it this way: the Greater Hartford NAACP, they can endorse you as a candidate running for mayor.
No, they can't.
They can't do that?
No.
Oh, so they don't have the authority to do that?
Well, everyone has the authority to do that, but they're a 501c3, and they don't endorse.
They don't endorse
candidates.
Oh, okay.
They just as a policy, they don't do that.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's nothing then that
they may quietly get behind someone.
Mm-hmm. But they can't endorse.
But they don't outright endorse.
Okay. So there's no need a meeting talking about whether they can endorse and work with your campaign and endorse you as the mayor. Okay. Well, I'm glad you clarified that. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's not much to really say about violence and gun violence. But I think you stated it, the fact that people don't care about your life, and
people don't care about life. Right. If it would be nice if people did. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of what you were talking about earlier would require people to care. So the moral compass of people is not pointing toward true north. It's pointing toward self.
Right.
So as long as self is glorified, as long as self is deified, as long as self moves forward, then they're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if people are concerned about other human beings, then their decisions are always going to be what is in the best interest of this person.
Mm-hmm.
Not my best interest, their best interest. We live in a society that puts self-interest first.
Yes.
What's in my best self-interest? When it comes to elections, they tell you vote your interest.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
And then the real architects of the architects of political policy and systems will have no problem telling you there are no permanent friends, just permanent what? Interests.
Interests, yeah.
So you have people trying to cozy up and be friends with people who don't. Your friendship doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships matter only in the sense that it takes relationships to move interests forward. But don't confuse relationships with friendship.
Right. Well, you told me that a long time ago. When I first started with this hosting or co-hosting or producing, many of these guests are not my friends. Just because I can book them as a guest, we're not friends. We're not going out eating dinner. And they're not going to be concerned.
Right, spending the night after a day at the pool.
Right.
Couple rounds of golf.
Now there has been some that I could say has been more like associates, but not still not friendships where we're going to go out.
Right. You have associates and you have casual friends.
Casual friends, right?
Like Clarence Thomas has a friend. They go vacationing together. Friends do that.
Yes.
A lot of people don't see that they don't think it's possible they can have friendship because they don't have friendships like that.
Right.
But there's families that go vacationing together every year.
Mm-hmm.
When I say families, I don't mean like families. I mean there's this family and this family. They don't have. There's no relation other than the friendship. The kids are friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they go places, they go vacation, they go fishing, skiing, they go to Vegas, they go on cruises. And so these are deep friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who form deep, lasting friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Others see people as assets and things that they could use to meet and get to a certain objective.
Right.
All right. The political class is famous for that.
Mm-hmm.
So they need you in order to get into office.
Right.
So now you're their friend. Until you get into office, then they're not friends anymore because they were never friends. Mm-hmm. You have a relationship, but the relationship was established on meeting their interests.
Their interests, right.
No permanent friendships, just permanent interests. That's why they can throw you under the bus with a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to learn about that part of life too, who are your real true friends and who are just
absolutely
there for your personal interests or their interests or mutual interests and associates and things on that level. But still, let's not get away from the big problems. I mean, another person was killed by some hit and run driver on Farmington Avenue, Gillette Street.
Very unfortunate, very, very horrible, unfortunate incident.
Yeah.
The best that one could do is create an atmosphere where that kind of activity does not happen. Accidents happen. So the driver should get out of the car and wait.
Wait, right.
Render aid as best they can and wait, not run.
Right.
But when you have a life-affirming society, you do what's in the best interest of the life that's in the least.
Well, this is the second vehicle death over the past month. I think the last one was this basketball coach on Main Street
and up by the West Indian Club.
Yes, by the West Indian. So
Rosemont.
The reputation, I mean, how people drive in the city of Hartford is not just a perception. I mean, these give strong evidence that you got to really be on your P's and Q's. You know,
because Hartford is lawless. It's lawless.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way to put it. Lawless.
Right.
Lawless. They blame it on whatever they want. There's no rhyme, no reason to justify why Hartford continues to be as lawless as it is, other than there's no intentional effort to stop it from being such.
Right. And Mayor Bronin, Hartford, he held a press conference.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big visual and rally on Huntington Street where a 12-year-old girl was killed. That drew a lot of people. But I don't know what Mayor Bronin's plan is going to be beyond this, though. He's only going to be in office for 6 more, maybe 6 to 8 more months. So he has
till December the 31st.
So he still has time, to really do something or address something. He seemed very broken down at the press conference.
I'm sure he was.
Yes,
I'm sure he was. This is a horrible tragedy for everyone in the community, and he's human and he is affected by it just like everyone else. His office is different than him as a human being and as a person.
Right.
And so many people are touched by it. Many people are frustrated by it. Many people are angry. And people express their angers and frustration and remorse and loss in different ways. So, everyone does not express grief the same. But unfortunately, these kinds of incidents happen.
Right.
The question is, what is going to be done to try to eliminate this from happening again? And how practical are those? I've covered vigil after I've covered so many vigils that I don't cover them anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, were you planning to cover this one? But I figured
I don't cover vigils.
You don't cover vigils anymore?
No.
Okay.
Because you have to be careful of you cover certain things and then it becomes normalized. It becomes normalized. This is not a thing to cover. My intention is to make people aware of a thing, not celebrate it.
Right.
So at some point, there's a very fine line between making known and celebrating. We don't want to get to a place where we celebrate loss, and the loss brings us together more than the life bringing us together.
But I think you also stated in the past that you don't like to give people the impression that this is all that exists towards the negative things in the city of Hartford. You kind of like to show balance. The news is going to report incidents like this anyway, so you don't have to really provide information about the incident. You could have had it like a press conference, and you could have had more time than your local news affiliates. You could have covered the whole event. Again,
you don't need a press conference to make people aware of something. Well, let me rephrase that. If there's an incident that happens, that is the news. A press conference creates opportunity for the press to hear about something that needs to be noised abroad. All right. We need solutions, not a press conference.
Yes.
We need to memorialize the loss, so you have a vigil.
Well, to be honest, Dan, I think the 3 people, I don't know their situation. The 3 people that were shot at, they need to be they need to be heard. I mean, they need to express exactly what's going on with their life, because somebody trying to kill you your life is still in danger. The person hasn't been captured, so I don't know how people like the community that cares, they work in this area, but these 3 people, whenever they are released from the hospital and back on their feet, if they haven't already been released, I would assume, they need to be reached. I mean, they need to get their life in order.
Right. I'm sure there are efforts being made to do just that.
Okay. So
there are systems and mechanisms in place to talk to individuals who have been targeted for, what they. No, it's not like. It's not like there isn't something being done.
Mm-hmm.
But people are upset and angry. And understandably so. And so the conversations help people resolve some of that. So there's some therapeutic value in the conversation. There's understanding and venting, and then there's the conversation that is meant to arrive at a solution. So there's different types of conversations.
Well, Stan, it's not like you can say it's not like things haven't been done, but the numbers are getting worse. I mean, usually when you got something that's really
something's
effective,
not working.
Yeah, it's not working. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Right.
You could say with all true fairness, something is trying to happen to make something better, but the numbers are not looking like they're really working. And again, it's easy to sit on the sidelines because this is a tough, dirty job, man. Getting involved in this type of elements of people, hardened criminals, dealing with people who got, serious issues. There are people cut out to know how to handle people like this. Every person is not the right fit for every particular situation.
That is very true.
So you can't mix different groups of people together. When people say you want people to get involved, yes, that is true, but to get involved with people that's being released from prison, knowing how to deal with what they're dealing with, you got to be professionally to some degree.
Well, I wouldn't say people being released from prison. I would say if someone has criminal intent, being involved with them is something that you need to have to know what you're doing.
Right.
In theory, when a person is released from prison, they've served their time and they move on. There's not like a permanent stain on you because you serve time. I'm an advocate of clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
So if you served your time and you can be released, then your time has been served. Time served. So they can't have it both ways. What's the problem is there's some people that should not have been released.
Right.
That doesn't mean everybody, but it means some folk. Because the people who actually did their time, made a mistake, served their time, have been deemed to have reformed their lives, turned their lives around, want a fresh start, want a new start. They return to society. There should be resources to allow them to move forward and on with their life. But there's some people who have no intention of reforming.
Mm-hmm.
Those individuals are the ones that come out in the community and do stuff.
Well, see, that's all still a part of the reentry system program. You can say you leave with a clean slate, but you still got to get your life back on track.
You need to get Mike Leibowitz in here.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's an expert at that subject.
Okay.
Michael Leibowitz.
All right.
And he just got out.
Okay.
And has written a couple books and has a podcast of his own. He's often on Todd's show.
But
if the system is not trying to reform you,
right.
So if you have a system that's why I talked about systemic failures. If the criminal justice system, if the Department of Corrections fails to do its job, where it's just become an employment center and a housing agency and a slave labor pool, then when people have served their time, there is no reform. There is no adjustment. So people come out and they're not ready to come out. Where people are ready, they should be allowed to come out. So I have a problem when you have systems that are designed to do something and then everyone knows it doesn't work, and they want to address some other issue when the real issue is something they never ever talk about.
Well, the only thing with that is, just as much as you got to deal with the Department of Corrections and that element, you still got to deal with a system that you help prevent people from getting into that system. You know, the criminal justice system, you know, I don't have a criminal record.
I think that we are keeping lots of people out of the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because some people wind up breaking the laws, breaking the rules, and getting involved, does not mean that there aren't multitudes who did not.
Yeah.
So everyone's not going to be in that group. Some people choose to do wrong, Jonathan.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You were saying we as a whole, I think it's just might be people with some support and some, you know, life interaction with people. But realistically, you can take a lot of people growing up in high crime, drug infested areas, and probably most of it has come on their own whereabouts to say that I don't want to go down this path. I don't know if it's really been a great effort to say we got things in place where you don't have to get involved in the criminal justice system that can show you. I think there are programs and there are resources out there that do help people say that you don't need to go down this path. But I think it's just probably more on the whereabouts that I got to do something to get myself a better life in this high crime or drug infested area. And through the grace of God, you know, I'm not in that particular situation. I can't look at the public school system and saying, if you're mentioning 60% of people illiterate in the city of Hartford, I can't look at the Hartford public school system and saying they're doing a great job at certain things. I can't say many of our elected officials are doing their best job, although they may be working towards some things, but I can't give them a high grade. I can't look at probably, and I don't like to bring the churches involved in this, but I got to bring it to some degree. I don't know if you can look at the religious congregation, although they help the members in their congregation.
They help their members, but are they effective in the community?
Right.
Look at the community. That's not an indictment on the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact.
Right.
Look at the community. If is your community crime ridden?
Mm-hmm.
Are there homicide every night? The murder rate going up or down?
Yeah.
It's a crime happening around churches?
It is. Things are happening right around your churches.
So, from the perspective of a quote unquote church, we could go down the Bible highway.
Mm-hmm.
Two strong men cannot occupy the same house.
Mm-hmm.
Darkness and light don't occupy the same space. Darkness is the absence of light. Where there's light, darkness cannot exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the righteous reign and the righteous are in the community, then evil has to flee. So if there's more evil than there is righteousness, then the churches become ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
They become a social club,
Mm-hmm.
babysitting outfit, feeding the homeless and the hungry.
Right.
But they're not providing spiritual light and guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So one might say that their main mission has been undermined and compromised. And they alone have to give the account for that. You can't blame that on anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so where is the moral compass that we should be having in our community? If the moral compass stops pointing north, when folk get out of prison, when people decide to start to go the right way, when they weren't going the right way, they were going the wrong way, they want to get right. Well, they have to. Where is right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem. When the signposts are taken off the road, it's very easy to get lost.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the guardrails off the winding road on the mountainside, it's easy to go off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if someone wants to do wrong, if they want to go out and live whatever way they want to live, that is their choice.
Right.
But when the time comes in their life that say, you know what, I want to get my act together, and they start looking for how to get their act together, when there's no rescue ship and you're trapped at sea, you're done.
Well, that's what
and that's what the churches should be.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of meant. You know, it's one thing to say we have a society that people grow up and many people don't ever engage in criminal and being involved in the criminal justice system. But if you could really pinpoint in saying, well, the schools are the real impactful reasons, your business communities are really making a difference, to say there's no even need for you to even thinking about becoming a criminal, because there's so much things that we are willing to work with you. You know, I don't think the residents, and I've said this, probably it's not about thinking, I think the residents are not put first. In most inner cities throughout the country. I think if you go to Baltimore, you'll find many people feel like, hey, this city is not really set out to be served for people that live in the city.
I agree with you on that 100%. The residents aren't first. They may be a second to last.
Yeah.
They most certainly aren't first.
Right.
And you can't expect the residents to be better if the resources they need to make them better aren't available. Mm-hmm. If your neighborhood decline, buildings in your neighborhood decline, resources to your neighborhood decline.
Right.
You see resources other places going up, increasing. So if they're going up in other communities in your town or city, but yours is going down, that means that there's an unequal distribution of those resources. So their success is at your expense, and that plays on people's mind after a while. And so, you know, the powers that be are more than well aware of this. It's not rocket science. This is like 101. They know exactly what the outcome is. They can predict the outcome. They can predict how many prisons build based off of third grade education.
Man,
so
you
I mean, you know, if you can figure out how many prisons to build off of a third grader, then you know what you need to do to stop it from happening. And so these are forecasts. They're almost like industries. As I say, there's no need for cotton because we are the cotton. People are the cotton. You're the cotton.
But again, even with all that aside, I know you still have a high standard, Stan, that you can understand why certain things are taking place in the city. But I think one time, I don't know, I won't say Senator Coleman was endorsing this, but he was responding that maybe paying criminals, remember I had mentioned this to you before, paying criminals or paying some gang members not to do crime. You know, it's almost like I said, being extorted by the community. You can't accept that. We can't say now, okay, you
incentivize the criminals.
Yeah.
You gonna pay me not to do crime?
Yeah, pay you not to do crime.
I'm gonna become a criminal and not get paid and paid not to do crime.
Yeah. Or maybe it was the shooting or killing. Maybe, you know, as long as you don't, I've heard this before. If you want to sell drugs, you can sell drugs, but as long as you don't do the shooting and the killing. But that's kind of hard to prevent.
That's a problem too.
You know, it is. Selling drugs is a problem thing.
Right. Illegal drug sales are a detriment to the community, and it's also breaking the law. Irrespective of what people want to rationalize in their own head, so it's against the law. So,
you can't accept that. As just,
right.
We're not gonna bother you as long as you just sell drugs. But
now there are some things that people have to understand are reasonable because things are going to happen, and you know. So where are drugs sold? How are drugs sold? What communities are they sold? So, you know, as I like to say, Hartford doesn't have a drug problem. Avon does.
Right.
Simsbury does. Glastonbury, Wethersfield. A lot of the druggies are down at Hartford Hospital working.
But Hartford is
the doctor staff.
But Hartford,
and then on their way home, they pick up a couple of, you know, white shirts.
Yeah, it doesn't have a drug problem, but it has a drug crime problem, and that is enough. You can say that the people are not in Hartford supporting the illegal drug underground economy, but clearly the shooting over this turf and these things are taking place mostly in the drug stores. You know, people are not going out to Avon shooting someone over a drug deal gone bad. They're sold mostly directly on large numbers in your street corners.
In the street corners, if they're not delivered to you directly.
They do that too, right?
Right. So, you know.
But a local drug dealer is most likely, it's usually the person from Avon is going to come into Hartford to get the drugs more than someone in Hartford going way out to Avon. Although that could be changing too here and there, but that's usually the trend. You're going to come into the drugstore to get, you don't want people in Avon seeing you buying drugs. You're trying to cover up your little game. So, but you know, these are real, unfortunately, predicaments that we are in as a whole, if we want to look at it that way or not. We may say it's not my problem.
Well, these things are society's problems, and that's why we'll come back next week.
Yeah.
To discuss them even more. We're out of time, Joe.
Okay, appreciate this show this morning.
So, great program. Great conversation.
Mark is on top of his game.
As always.
Exactly.
All right, my friends, we'll see you next time. You all have a great rest of your day. Do something wonderful for yourselves. If you have an opportunity to show up at Hartford High, you may want to do that this Thursday. There's a mayoral forum, and it's being done by OPP, and the young people are doing this whole forum, so there should be a lot of interesting stuff going on. Hope you can turn up and participate and support the young folk as they look for what they want in municipal leadership. Have a great rest of your day.